Hey guys, it's Chris, and welcome to the Tone and Toneful video podcast, episode number 39. When you minimize, you maximize. So in this week's episode, I wanted to talk to you guys about why when we minimize the distractions in our life and we minimize the material things in our life, we become maximized in our output potential. I know a lot of us in this particular society, just the Western society, a lot of the ideas is the more the better. More is more. And, on some levels, maybe that could be true on some things like knowledge, or maybe that could be true on some things like, maximizing your potential. But in a lot of ways, we've been taught to maximize a lot of things in the wrong perspective. A lot of us have been taught to maximize the amount of material things that we have and to maximize the amount of distractions that we have. And I kind of wanted to talk to you guys about how to maybe look at your life and build a minimized version of what your life is so that you can maximize the output on the things that you are working on. And this is never easy because a lot of this has been ingrained into us. So many of us have a lot of different types of distractions and hobbies and little things that we have built into our day and built into our life that we feel that we almost must do. And I'm here to tell you, and there's many other people here to tell you, but I'm here to bring that message forward once again, that having a lot of distractions actually makes it a lot harder to accomplish your missions. So I want to talk to you guys about maybe how to minimize some of that and how to look at your day and see what's going on. Now, one of the number one things that, I've promoted on here a lot, and, I've kind of been, a big, proponent of is, taking care of your garden, tending your garden, which is yourself. And there's a lot of people who are into the self-help type energy, where it's the self-help books or the self-help. I write my journal every morning. I do yoga. I do this. I do that. And I think one thing that a lot of people seem to miss and a lot of people seem to struggle with is kind of understanding that while a lot of these things are very important, writing in our journal daily or doing a lot of these different activities, if you have a way to mentally take care of some of this stuff, you might actually be a little bit better than always spending a lot of time absorbing self-help material. So for example, if you wake up in the morning and you have to be at work at 8 o'clock in the morning and you're waking up at 5 o'clock, you have about 2.5 hours, maybe 2 hours to get ready before you need to head to work. It might not be the most, it might not be the best idea to be spending time with 30 minutes on a journal, 30 minutes on yoga, and then 30 minutes cooking food. You have like literally no time to get ready. Maybe for a person who has time, where they start work at noon, that might be a little bit easier of a process, but waking up at 4 and 3 o'clock in the morning and getting no sleep is also not the answer, because I'm never a person who will push, the hustle culture on anybody. You do need to work hard. You do need to be consistent, but consistency will beat working hard for short bursts and burning out. But back to what I was saying, when we are looking at our lives and we're looking at self-help, I used to journal every single morning, every morning. But during the time I was journaling, I was also not playing guitar as often because I was healing from an injury. And, I was working on some personal things that had to be dealt with before I could do music to the extent that I wanted to do it. Whether that was me understanding how much of a perfectionist I was, or me being able to kind of see, hey, how am I going to push my level of self forward so that I'm strong enough to be a consistent person in the daily for what I needed. And as I got closer and closer to what my goal was of who I was trying to become and what I needed, I noticed that the journaling is very important still. That doesn't change how important it is, but it changes my way of viewing it. It changed my way of kind of how often I did it. And now when I journal every 2 or 3 days, and I make sure that I take time for myself every day in the morning for a few minutes, but I try to get right on top of what I'm trying to maximize. So I minimize that daily routine a little bit so that I could maximize my days a little more. I wanted to have more time to play music, and I wanted to have more time to be on the guitar so that I could get closer to finishing up these projects, because I do work a job full time. So if you take 40 hours out of your week and you take traveling time to back and forth to work, which is an hour every day for me, about-ish, you are now starting to run into a situation where you have a little bit less time. And so if you're going to be doing music and you want to spend 3 or 4 solid hours a day on it, you need to have your night free, and you need to take care of like your meal prepping in the morning. If you're someone like me who's working on your diet, that is not something I will let go of. My diet is something that I keep very together. It's something that I will not let go of. And, that was a place where I could minimize. So in my morning, I minimized that. And also I've been back into bodybuilding a little bit more again. I've been putting on a little more size again, 2-3 pounds here and there. And the work is getting harder and harder, and I need more time to hit progressive overload. So, before, when I was still healing from my injuries, and, the last year has been kind of a little bit of a wonkier, like, oh, I do a workout, but I only do one like every other day, or I do this, but it's a lot more separated. Now I am starting to kind of get it on a point where I'm working out more often. So I needed to minimize the journaling time, and I started minimizing the amount of time that I spent, maybe watching YouTube content that of any kind, whether it was just about how to get this guitar tone, or, how to mix this. And it's like, okay, those are all great. I'm not saying that they don't serve a purpose, but what I do is I let myself come to the point where I need the video. So I'll work on guitar and go, this is kind of weird. How do I figure this out? And then I could look it up. Or I go, hey, I was trying to mix this and I can't figure out how to make this mix bus work with this. And then I'll look that up. So I kind of wait until life shows me what I need, rather than trying to be a jack of all trades and have the maximum amount of information. So before, I was always trying to have the maximum amount of information, and I was always trying to do the maximum amount of self-help per day. And what I realized is, if that got minimized just to the right amount, it allowed me to be a little bit more focused on my music daily, because I was cutting time back on my music previously and in my working out, and that was where I was kind of losing some time. Now, another thing that I can talk about when it comes to minimizing is minimizing your thought process. There's a lot of things that, we might think about during the day, and it's tough, especially with like social media. And as I've been getting more back on the guitar, of course, I need to increase my social media presence, or I need to share stories, or I need to, be a little more aware of like, okay, so if I do the music, how am I getting this out there? And it's easy to sit there and scroll. It is easy to sit there and scroll. And this is besides the point of, being like, oh, wow, I saw this post. I don't know if I'm good at guitar. Oh, I saw this. And so those are all other side things that are even more distractions. But just the sheer amount of time spent scrolling, liking things, commenting things, getting into little messages with people where you burn 20 and 15 minutes on just messages with people. And you're like, oh man, I was supposed to be like, I told myself I'd be ready with this by 7:30, and now it's 7:45, but it's, I'm trying to be polite and answer this person's messages because I want to get back to them. I don't want to just be the person who gets 10 messages from them and doesn't even respond. So, you got to be careful. So minimizing the amount of time on social media. If this is turning your phone on airplane mode for a certain amount of time while you're working on certain things, you might need to do that. You might need to be like, hey, I set aside this time during the day for, some social media stuff, and I have it, and like, I'm going to go check it out. And, maybe later when I'm like kind of in a later part of the day, I can do a quick scroll through, but minimizing it down to something that is very concentrated so that you're maximizing your day. Because what are you writing a story about if you're just on there all day double checking if someone liked this or someone liked that or someone said this or someone said that? You're not going to get very far in your day if the whole day is based around what's going on your social media. So that's another thing to keep in mind, is minimizing the amount of time in screen time that you have. So this could be all sorts of things, social media, checking emails, find a way to set aside a blocked amount of time and try to do those in a more concise way. So then that way you're not just like, oh man, I forgot I got to do this and I got to do that. So do that in a way that minimizes the amount of time you're on it, but maximizes it. Again, we're minimizing to maximize. So we're taking things down and we're making the most of it. And so next, another thing that I would suggest to you guys is when you have a day job, or for those of you who do have a day job, and even if your day job is music, minimize the amount of time that you need to spend on it after work. So if you are prepping for lessons and you are doing something for work, so you have work emails and things like that, make sure you're very focused at work. One of the things that I noticed is as I build up my team and I build up my energy at work, and I've been working really hard on leadership the last year where, I want to be that person that people can come to and people can ask things from. But you know what that does? It turns to everybody coming to you and everybody asking you stuff. And what you need to do is you need to minimize it in a certain way where you can get your stuff done, but at the same time, be there for those people. Because I'm not trying to negate being there for those people. I'm not trying to tell them, hey, come to me for all this stuff. And then a month later, I'm like, wait, you guys are all making me busy. I don't want to do it anymore. You can't be inconsistent like that. So what I learned to do was, you guys all remember those teachers or professors who actually had like office hours? And if you wanted to talk about the grade that you had on something, or if you wanted to discuss, hey, I need to do some extra credit, or hey, I didn't understand this assignment, could I come and meet with you and talk with you about it and get my questions answered? The teacher didn't frivolously answer questions during the class. They had office hours. You need to create that for yourself in a weird way. Whether it's, hey, if your students have questions, be like, hey, I'm only going to answer them during this time of the day, or I'm only going to be doing that. And as I've been teaching more guitar lessons, it's something that I've been needing to work on because I have people messaging me throughout different days on different things, asking me if they can switch their schedule up. And people are going to do what you let them do to you. And this isn't because they're trying to be negative. People just naturally want to do what works for them. You need to also set up what works for you. So you need to find a way that you get what you want in there while they're also able to do what they need to do. For example, if they're canceling their lesson on a Sunday, and I have a lot of people try to switch to Wednesdays. And so now I have my Wednesdays kind of wonky now because I have people who want to do lessons on Wednesday rather than doing them on Sunday, where I have most of my lessons now. I try really hard to go, you know what? Why don't we skip the week? It might be financially a little less for me, or it might be this or that, but I will meet up with you next week and we will do it next Sunday, and I'm going to keep my schedule with you, okay? So I want you to practice this and this just over the week. And I'll give them a real quick sheet and I'll shoot it to them, with a PDF with something on it. And that's what they need to work on. So then that way next week when we meet up, we're not too far behind the 8 ball. Now, one of the things that I'm very, very aware of is it's not easy, and that's why you got to work on your communication, and that's why the episode Say What You Need to Say is going to be the linked one for this one, because if you say what you need to say and you give it to them with love, but you're honest and you come from a good place, you can tell them, hey, yo, this is what you need to be doing. And you can be honest about it, and it won't hurt their feelings. Trust me. I've learned a lot of times when you're worried about hurting someone's feelings, it's because you're coming from a place where you're emotional and you're upset, rather than coming from a place that you're telling someone what they need to hear and you're doing it correctly. Doing that correctly doesn't hurt anyone's feelings. It actually is better to communicate. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about is if you have emails at work and you have things at work, make a certain time of the day that you don't answer it anymore. For me, when I get off work, I check my emails one more time at 9:00 at night just to see how the end of the night went at my job, because I'm a leader there, so I need to know kind of how things tied up. But I'm never going to be the kind of person who's going to sit there and check my emails from work every hour just to sit there and check my emails and be the guy who's trying to beat everyone at work. You're never going to beat everyone at work by just working more in a very silly way like that. How you're going to beat everyone at work is being very concise in what you do to minimize. You will then maximize. You'll get things done if you want to spend the least amount of time and get things done. Trust me, this will help. So we've talked about, maybe your self-help routine or your get ready routine in the morning and your night. We've talked about social media and how that can be, minimizing on the social media. We've talked about minimizing on, work things and things outside of work, getting work to be during work hours so you have outside time. The next thing that I would say minimizing on is really important to maximize is material things. It is very easy to get caught up in buying material things. As a matter of fact, it's almost too easy. It's very easy to go buy something. It's very easy to go, hey, I'm working on this music. I'm going to go buy another guitar. I just bought another guitar this week. Tom Anderson, making music. Thank you. But I'm also letting 2 guitars go. I'm selling my 2 Mobius guitars. If any of you guys are interested, please hit me up in my direct messages. But the whole point of what I'm saying is when you get to the point that you're minimizing your material things, you can really maximize your finances and you can maximize your focus. When you're buying stuff all the time, you get caught in quite a lot of different little things that waste time. You get caught up in the time wasted of buying it, looking up information on it, looking up this, thinking, is that the right thing for me, reading reviews. 2, you get wasted in the time of you purchase it. Now you're waiting on the shipping. You're wondering if it's going to get to the right place. Is it going to get here? Okay, cool. It got here. I got it. Cool. You're going to waste space on the box for it. You're going to waste space on owning it. You're going to waste space on your mental real estate of like, oh, I'm so excited about this all the time. You really need to minimize the amount of things you have so you can maximize your output. If you're a musician and you're buying new instruments all the time, you spend all your time getting used to new instruments. You're never the best you can be on that instrument because you're always like, oh, well, this one I'm getting used to it, or this one I'm still kind of learning the sounds of it. Find something that you like and stick with it. And that is a commitment I made to myself when I got this new guitar. Is it's not about how many guitars I have, but it's about having the ones that actually prove useful for recording. So the ones that I was using that weren't useful for recording for me, the tones didn't come out correct, the recording didn't come out correct. I stopped wasting time on figuring out how to make that work. Stopped figuring out how to put new accessories in it or new pickups. For me in guitars, it's pickups. So I'm looking at pickups. I'm looking at, oh, will this help? Will that help? Honestly, none of that's going to help. None of it's going to help because now I'm wasting time not playing music. I'm sitting around reading stuff on, guitar tone forums and things like that to figure out, is this right? Is this right? And what I really need to be doing is sending my tracks off to the few people. I have a couple friends in mind, and you know who you guys are, to be doing some music with me. And I'm really excited, and I have guitars together now that the tones are coming out correct. My playing is finally coming out correct. It's all merging. I don't need anything else. I'm not looking for anything else. The only thing I need to do now is tie up the artwork that I'm doing with a very special artist that I'm going to be excited to share once she is finished doing the art. And we are going to be putting out an album this year because the length of this album, I think, is LP level. So I think I've gotten past 30 minutes. So it's definitely a full length. And I'm not going to do the whole thing where I release a single. I'm going to release one single on you guys. And then after that, I'm going to drop. And for me, what I'm starting to really realize and what I'm starting to have the mental picture of is, what does my music career look like? And I might not be starting as early as some, but that doesn't make it less impactful. I've got to minimize my items that I'm focusing on to maximize the output potential of very few things. And that's a choice that you have to make. Because once we get past the material things aspect of this, I'm almost done with it. You can buy the new phone, you can buy the new computer, you can buy the new program, you can screw around with the new plugins, you can do all this stuff. But the real question is, are you getting things done? If you're able to buy all that stuff and get things done and still maximize your money potential and maximize everything else, good. Maybe getting an endorsement's a good idea so then you can save some money. Maybe getting an endorsement's a good idea so you can get some plugins for free. Maybe working really hard on your Instagram, working really hard on your musical output, working really hard on your releases is actually a better way to get to saving finances and finding more of what you need rather than always researching and spending money. Just a little food for thought. Do what you need to do, like what we talked about last week, faster from your thought process to the work. Because the more I record, the more I actually do stuff, the more I realize that doesn't work or that doesn't sustain what I'm trying to do. And the quicker you get to that mentally, the quicker you know what you need. It's no different than you wear certain clothes, and if you actually put the certain clothes on and give a style a chance, you go, you know what, I gave the long shirt style a chance. It doesn't work on me. Or, hey, I gave the baggy pants style a try. It doesn't work on me. I tried the too tight pants. It doesn't work on me. This works for me with these shoes, with this look. Cool. I'm going to kind of build my look around these basics. Now you know what to do to not waste your time. When you go to the mall, what do? You go to certain stores, you buy what you need, you get out, right? You don't want to walk to every store in the mall. How much time are you wasting? It's like 400 stores in the mall. Same thing with musical instruments. You could be trying every brand out. You could be trying this. You could be trying a harp made out of gold. You could be trying strings that are coated, strings that are not coated. When you find something that you like and it works for you and you just go, this clicks, go with it. And if something needs to be changed later, figure it out. But go with it for then. And you will maximize what you're doing. And now the, final point that I want to make, it's how do you figure out what in your life is the most important? And you've got to experiment a little bit. But I think that if you experiment in minimizing what you do and don't need, you will find out there are plenty of places in your life that you can save time and build up that extra 2 to 3 hours per week. When I first started doing Toned and Toneful, I did not know how to make time for it. But as time moved on, I now know how to make time for editing a video, what I need to do, and I look forward to doing more things with it because as I minimize up my recording time that I need to do, and as things are getting finished up song-wise and I'm just practicing, I can now move my effort to practicing for a couple of hours a day in a block, and I can do more for Toned and Toneful. I have a lot of different plans for Toned and Toneful, and it's a little bit of a bummer to me that I haven't been able to dive fully into it, but I'm not the kind of person who's going to stay up and wreck myself just to get a little bit more done every day. I do not believe in hustle culture. I don't believe in losing sleep, eating poorly, and you'll sleep when you're dead. I get it. There's time to get stuff done. Don't be lazy. But the aspect of run yourself to the ground and then you have to recover and then run yourself to the ground and you have to recover. I see people who live that life and I look at them spiritually and I look at them physically and I look at how their life is, their relationships, and that is not something I'd rather have. I'd rather have consistency and be someone who's working towards something all the time and I know what my goals are and I'm committed to them. And being committed doesn't mean it's always fun. There's times right before I record that I'm like, oh yeah, I'm doing this. And particularly for me, I like to play music. So recording is a very, very hard aspect for me. It's not that fun. But once I start tying down the details and I work on it every day, recording has gotten more fun. It went from a 5 out of 10 to now it's a 7 out of 10 because I can hear every little detail and I'm like, all right, so this is what I'm really locking in on now. This is what I'm doing. And I think when you get to that point where you've minimized what you need to focus on and you maximize the few things that you need to do, you start realizing you can get good at things. You realize that this is not as hard as I'm making it seem. So for you guys who feel overwhelmed sometimes, and for you guys who feel sometimes that, dang, I'm spending all this time on all this stuff that I think is supposed to be part of this grand scheme of making me the best person I can be, remember that there's no perfect way to do it for every single person that's the same. The diet that works for me might not be the exact diet that works for you. The practice regimen that works for me might not be the same one that you need or that someone else needs. And just remember that the more that you can lock in on what's appropriate for you and the more that you can lock in on what feels good to you, you're going to be in a space where you can enjoy and you can be the kind of person that you want to become. So you guys got to think about, where can I minimize in my life to maximize? Sometimes, and a lot of the times, less is more. There are times that more is more. There are times that when having a little more experience is going to be more output and more maximum gains. But how do you get to that more? Is by minimizing the other places in your life so you can focus more on something. Remember, we don't have to have everything. You don't have to have a fancy car if that doesn't matter to you. If it matters to you, then cool, save up money, work on that, and make that a part of what you work on. If you need to have fancy guitars, then work on what that needs to be that. But do not overinstate any one part of the process, because we are a part of a main process. And find what's important to you and put the effort into those things. And the things that aren't so big, you're going to have to accept the outcome that it's going to be different for you than another person. So if one person is driving fancy cars and playing fancy guitars, and you're like, man, I don't have a fancy car, but you don't really care about fancy cars, why are you feeling bad? Minimize that thought process. Minimize that need to be keeping up with everything. Minimize that level of I've got to do this, 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 this. If you are really good at having like a mental self chat and you're like, you kind of always talk with yourself, or you pray a lot, or you have like a way of spiritually kind of reconnecting with yourself that you don't need to journal, that you reflect in a way that it doesn't require that. Like maybe you drink a cup of coffee and actually give yourself a minute to think, or maybe before you go to bed at night, you're kind of more reflective than some people, then maybe you don't need to journal. Maybe the journaling is for someone who struggles with that a little bit, self-reflection, like me, or I struggle with that a little bit because I'm a very reflective person, but I need to like see it written down. And some people don't need that. Some people can just go right into what they're doing and they're totally fine. So if you can see where I'm coming from on this, that minimizing to maximize can come in all sorts of different flavors and all sorts of different sizes. It doesn't really matter how you do it, but it matters that you do it. You understand what I'm saying? And so for you guys, I really hope that episode number 39, you have to minimize to maximize, was a very insightful episode for you. And I hope that you guys take the mindset and take the love of what you do every day, and you learn to make that something that you can be happy with, because you don't have to have more to win. You don't have to have more to be the best that you want to be. To be the best you want to be, all you need to do is focus and really bind down on the things that are your core values, really live up to them principle-wise. And it's a lot easier to live up to your principles and a lot easier to live up to your commitments when they're ones that you want to keep, when they're ones that you want to do, and you won't fail. You won't falter yourself. So I want to say thank you guys for listening to episode number 39. I really hope that in this week, you guys can minimize a few things in your life to make your life a little bit easier, a little bit less cluttered, mentally, spiritually, physically, so you can get to where you want to be, so you can have more time for the things you want to do. Remember that the most important thing that we have is time and mental bandwidth. If we have the ability to think clearer and we have more time, those two things together create success on all sorts of levels, because you can mentally think of what you want and then get to it quicker, right? So let's create some success this week. Let's create some fun times this week. Let's create more time for ourselves this week that will allow us to be more effective in what we do. And I really hope that you guys have a great time. And above all else, stay toned and toneful.